Okay.
So, good afternoon or good evening, I should say, and welcome to our third Zoom meeting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can all see the agenda. I'm waiting for the volume button to go away before I click on the share button. Okay. So,
Being heard with
Okay.
okay.
All right.
We could just
And
circle back around so we can, yeah, we could just circle back
okay.
around.
Um, so for mine, once I got into the research, like something interesting I found is when I was getting into some of the research, there was a article by Blazar, and he kind of pointed out what I kind of call the risk versus reward of a decision a principal is faced with when looking at teacher assignments. And there's kind of a tendency that they examined in that, and it really shone light on an issue because like right now the principal I'm working under, he's already looking to see kind of based off of data where gaps may be next year and have an idea of where he may move people. And so some of the research I was able to take to the table said that that's actually not a good idea, because you have to weigh the risk versus reward of everything and consider moving your best teacher down to a struggling area. While that may close some gap there, it may create a brand new gap from where you just moved them from. But also, it may move a strong teacher away from their strength to a place where they're not as familiar with the grade level or content standards, and may weaken actually that teacher that was a strength in your building. So then you're getting kind of a double ding and dropping in two areas. So I thought that was really interesting because I know everybody's seen shuffles happen among staff. And so the research actually said, especially he pointed out that especially for our beginning teachers in their first 5 years, put them somewhere, let them be so they can learn the craft of teaching, and the standards and master the standards so they can really refine their strategies and practices as they master the content. So I thought that was interesting, and something I took away.
Okay. So, when
um
I did, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So, when I did my research using Integral and Strong, I learned that there is a clear link between teacher empowerment and retention. So, when teachers feel empowered to take on those leadership opportunities, they feel valued and they can work collaboratively successfully. And there's lower turnover rates. And then also on the flip side of that, just kind of piggybacking off of what Della was saying, um, it's teachers' responsibility to want to go after those leadership roles, but also they have to feel like it's okay to do that. If they don't have that support, then it's hard to go after those roles. So when they have that trust with their principal, then they're going to want to perform well and generally satisfied with their job.
And then I agree with both all of you were saying. And then I was saying that the principal is faced with many tasks when selecting new staff members and moving current staff to a different career path. And also, teacher has to fill many gaps, and principals are pressure on how they can ensure they have the best for the job.
And then,
And then I can also say, for example, I started off as fifth grade, and then my fourth year went to third grade. I was loving fifth grade, and then with the third grade, I'm like, yes, it was easier, but then also too the type from being like that teenager to the lower elementary, it was like a little different. Like ooh, the setting of the kids is totally different dropping from fifth to third grade. Totally a different mindset.
and I do like agree with what you all have saying, like have said. like the risk versus a reward thing is a gamble, and you can't really like think like that. You have to think about like if we're talking about efficacy and empowerment in teachers, you don't want to like disempower somebody by moving them around too much. So I do think that when you're hiring and retaining your teachers, you have to be intentional where you put them in because it does affect your school climate and culture when you're shuffling people around and everything. And what you also said, Pandara, was when teachers trust their principal, they become more empowered. And that's where that trust has to come in. But my question is with that gray area, what do you do with those teachers that they just don't care and they're just shuffling along because they're locked into this mindset where they don't want to be a leader, but at the same time, this is what you're tasked to do. Like it's on your observation. Like you need to lead your classroom. You can't just come in and just depend on the strongest teacher in the building because that's going to wear that stronger teacher out.
Right.
And I know some of you have seen that and
Yeah.
you're like, why are you here? But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a backstory. And it kind of took me back to what, when we come to work, we got to come to work and put our best foot forward.
Yes.
I would have to agree to that, especially since I've been in that position of being that strong teacher and having to do more work as and I kind of started to look at it as punishment at that point because the person that should be pulling their weight and doing more isn't, and there's no pressure to get them to do more, but it's more pressure on that stronger teacher to pull that weight. And so that starts to
Mm-hmm.
make you feel like I don't want to do this anymore. So I definitely
Mm-hmm.
would agree to that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a book. I actually used it in some of my research. It's Whitaker that our instructors kind of referenced. Our one of our last superintendents, he made everybody in the central office read what
Oh,
makes principals great.
yeah.
It's like the 18 great principal practices. So it actually talks about a lot of these things we're discussing right now. So it's a good read out at once we leave the course and get finished with the program. I highly encourage everybody for that to be your first read if you go into an administrator role, because it was cool. The central office did a book study with the principals, and we kind of partnered up with a principal to kind of go through some of these discussion points we're having right now.
Oh,
Okay.
another one is Teach Like a Champion, because that's
Mhm.
where you
Yes, I have that one too. Yeah.
anyway. And it has like all those like strategies,
Mm-hmm.
like a cheat sheet for everybody. And it talks about that empowerment and leadership because it's
Yeah.
very important. Like I was blown away. Like we as administrators, we have to lead the teachers to be leaders, and then the teachers have to lead the students. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
gotta kind of like be like, hey, I need you to run your classroom because if I can't trust you to run this classroom, you have some problems.
And it
Exactly.
takes a lot of, depending on the situation, it takes a lot of trust for an administrator to trust certain leadership opportunities with their teachers. So that's something that should be explored as well.
Yeah, I saw that firsthand at my school. Like when he said, "Hey, you're going to be chair of the sit team," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then when the other principal was like, "You're running AVIC, that's a whole district county program," and I was like, "Okay." And usually middle schools doesn't do that. High school normally the teacher normally runs the AVIC program. But they were like, "You did it
Look on
so
the floor behind the door.
well."
Awesome. Okay, so question number 2 says, based on your survey results, what were some teacher empowerment successes?
Oh, okay. So, the teacher was using intentional teaching and modeling each lesson with student engagement. Teacher feedback with their evaluation, whether it was formal or informal, like with our walkthroughs or, the beginning, whereas the um, unannounced and announced observation, and then the improvements in the area where it was more so with the walkthrough evaluation. They asked the administrators to have a conference with them where they can actually um, have a one-on-one where they can share more insight, because they at our school they use more like this type, I can't remember the name of the form, but it's more like an electronic form where they have this in-house that they adopted just for that school. And they some of the comments that some of the administrator write, they wanted to have more of a one-on-one because they didn't understand why they did like put certain things, and they felt like some of the administrators, they, whether it was the math or the reading coach, or it could have been the intervention person, or it could be the principal, assistant principal, they felt like some of them walk in and they gave good feedback, but then it could be one particular person, they felt like they throw off the whole vibe when they come in there, and it felt like they felt pressure, like they just want to nitpick with how they are teaching and how they're relating the lesson and stuff with
All
their with
right.
the
Time
student.
options.
Huh?
Your time's up.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna set the timer and I'm gonna be quick. The teachers were basically observed mentoring like student teachers. We had like a student teacher in seventh grade, and he was really observed. He was observed during a history lesson, like letting him teach the class and stepping in like minimally. Also, 80% of the teachers observed were embracing their role as instructional leaders through the use of best practices. At my school, we use Relay, which is the teaching like a champion or get better faster. And they were just basically taking advantage of being that instructional leader. Like you can tell that there was a sense of empowerment in 80% of the teachers. And in other classes, it was just like, I'm here and this is what I'm going to do. So basically, that was like my observation with the survey data had entailed.
Mhm.
So with the survey that I did with that I sent out to staff, one thing that really jumped out as a success to me is the district I'm doing my internship with and doing my work for the course in. They were it's Catawba County Schools. They were ranked number one in the teacher working condition survey statewide, and the school I'm at was ranked third highest in that district. So teacher empowerment and leadership has been is a strength in the school, but compared to other areas in the teacher working conditions survey, it was actually lower than some of these other areas. And it's a unique school in that the other really high ranking ones, the top five in the district, the one I'm at is the only one that is in not as an affluent area. So
Mhm.
for it to have high rankings on the teacher working conditions survey and high rankings in the survey that I sent out kind of speaks a lot to it. But two specific areas in the survey I sent to staff were on that my principal kind of pointed out some correlation with was with the budget and then the involvement in the school improvement plan process. And those were two of the more lacking areas where under 50% a year and a half ago when they filled it out indicated they didn't have input. And now both of those were up over 64%. And so seeing that growth, he was excited because it shows some of their action steps they've taken up to this point have kind of worked. And so a lot of that kind of he attributes to some of the research he had also done on Darling Hammond, just looking at trying to take some of the leadership opportunities, putting some of those things inside the school day to where it's not done after hours and giving time back to teachers. So I thought that that was very interesting that it confirmed what they were doing was correct.
All right, your time is up.
Okay, awesome. So when some of the successes at my school is the teachers have a high input on the professional development at my school. So at my school, we have like different correlates, and each correlate is responsible for a task from the school improvement plan. So my correlate is called successful students, and part of my involvement is creating professional development opportunities for teachers. So at the beginning of the school year, we send out a survey to the teachers and they just kind of type out what their preference are for professional development. My only thing with that is because it's only been sent out one time out of the year, they don't get a change. They don't get to like add additional input. So if they change their minds from the first time they put something there, they don't get that second opportunity to change or add something else that they want, or that something that they want that's interesting. So I would in the future just give them a survey maybe on a quarterly basis so they have the opportunity to add in or take away things they don't need. Um, also after the research from my AAPTEL process, again, I said I would recommend sending like a quarterly survey. The other success is that the teachers at my school have a role in the development of the school improvement plan. um, So 63, oh, sorry, I was about to go over that. Um, the teachers at my school, they do have the opportunity to be on the school improvement um, team, but there's just like one teacher from each grade level that have that opportunity. And typically they stay in that role for maybe 2 to 3 years. So they'll only swap out every 2 or 3 years. So that doesn't really give everybody the chance to be in that role. Um, but they do have an input on the school improvement plan. So that's part of the empowerment. So the third question was, what gaps has your PLC identified between what the research says and what teachers say according to the empowerment survey results?
So majority of my responses from that survey, 50% of the teachers play a role in the development of the school improvement plan. And then teachers play in setting the school-wide policy and development and management of the school budget. So not
And then
very much, it's just half and half.
And then for mine, because I can just quickly go over mine, they want to be involved in the hiring process, the budgetary management of the our budget, and basically like the school-wide like decision making. They want to have more involvement in that, but they are involved in the school improvement and they are involved with the professional development. It's just that hiring piece and also mentoring and coaching like in-house and just having more administrative walkthroughs to check what they're expecting from us. That's what our teachers feel they have a need for.
So for mine, it was kind of eye-opening because I found a correlation in my data. Out of the 15 responses I got, two both had only 64% of teachers agreeing that they had input, and that was in setting school-wide policy and then in their professional development offerings. And so I discussed this with my principal and looked at it a little bit further. And that 36% of the staff that's responding they don't have input is very close to the percentage of the staff that has been hired at the school within the last 3 years. The school has a very heavy personalized learning focus, and so a lot of the professional development that's not mandated by the state or district, like letters, anything that's school choice and autonomy and the school deciding, a lot of that has been personalized learning focus. And so what we discussed is maybe there's a correlation between those new teachers that are coming in. They weren't there when that initiative was started 3 years ago, and so they don't see the connection and where the staff had input 3 years ago. So continually revisiting the opportunity for new staff to interject in that, I think was one of the gaps we identified and kind of discussed, maybe including something like that in the onboarding process to kind of share, here's our vision. Are there any recommendations you have on how we can improve that? So we kind of took that avenue and then looked at Whitaker again as teacher perception isn't always reality, but it's their reality. And I say that because I'm an outsider not working in the school directly. I've seen places that have where teachers have less input. The teachers at this school have a lot of input, but in their perception, they don't have the input they feel like they could. So I think that looking at it from the lens of it's their perception may not be the reality of the school environment, but it is their reality that they're internalizing, I think is something we have to be mindful of and just socially kind of aware of.
Okay. So at my school, 63% of the teachers don't feel that they have an input and or management of the school budget, school budget, which I find kind of funny because some of them have um, a role in the school improvement plan, and part of being on that team is the
Budget.
budgeting, right? And so if they're sitting on sick, what is the purpose? You know what I'm saying? Like, what purpose do they serve as far as the budgeting? Is it that the principal is sharing what the budget is, and then um, just saying, "Hey, this is what I want to spend our funds on," and then there's no input. I just wonder what that process looks like at my school. I do plan to um, join SIT next year just to kind of see what that will look like. But I just thought that was kind of ironic for them to sit on SIT, but they don't have an input on the school budget. 70% of the teachers at my school also feel like they're not part of the hiring process. So with teachers wanting to participate in that, that gives them an opportunity to not only get to know their potential teammates, but then they have the opportunity to ask questions so that their potential teammate can kind of get to know them, and vice versa. They can ask questions as well to get to know their teammate. So um, I did have some proposed things that I wanted to start, but I just hope that I will get that support to get that happening. So, and then our last question for number 4 says, what strategies are your PLC considering to improve the teacher empowerment at your school?
Um,
Oh, we're running out of
so
time.
they're considering can't see mine. Is that mine? Number 4. Okay, so they're considering the teacher recruitment process because they feel like they should be a part of that. And helping with who should be on each grade level and
I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
building the building the teacher morale. At least once a month, having some kind of initiative to help celebrate or do some kind of team building activity, and more professional development geared toward their content area, in reading, math, science, or social studies, something. And then also establishing some kind of pipeline so that teachers can at least go into leadership roles.
More teacher involvement in the hiring process, the budget, school-wide policy by leveraging the connections with school improvement team. So therefore they can make those decisions and in-house mentoring and PD on cooperative structures.
A lot of what our PLC kind of discussed was to improve empowerment is kind of working on that perception, like I talked about. And because there are a lot of opportunities, but we don't always frame them as this is a leadership opportunity. So being very intentional about framing it through opportunities when, like, whether it be serving on committees, whatever it is, of here is a leadership opportunity. We value your buy-in, and being very clear and transparent about the budget has been a goal of the school over the last year. So in the weekly communications that go out, if there's money that's being spent or how, they actually put that in there for the teachers to see. So I think it's that transparency. And then part of it is being better at communicating because there is that teacher buy-in and leadership and empowerment for the members that sit on SIT. And sometimes the information covered in the school improvement team meeting doesn't always make it out. We talked about principals gatekeeping leadership opportunities. Sometimes SIT members unintentionally may be gatekeeping leadership information when they are discussing about the budget, and aren't really gathering feedback from everybody in that grade level or department. So we're looking at setting some clear expectations for members on sit after every meeting. They then have the responsibility and have to go communicate that back out to their grade level and setting in some checkpoints for that. So that was one of our big kind of takeaways, and we put in our action plan.
Okay, so I said that my PLC wants to propose a school budget team with just a team of teachers to include the media coordinator. Our PLC wants to propose a school budget team just with teachers. It gives the educators a greater voice in financial decision. Um, and that also gives them the opportunity to share like the different types of resources that they need in their classroom. Um, and then involving them in that process increase that transparency for sure. Um, this will also empower our teachers and foster leadership. The PLC also wants to propose a correlate team of surveys so the teachers can be assessed quarterly to assess their professional learning needs. This will allow us to identify the gaps and train them to provide targeted support. This will include leadership development opportunities for those interested in stepping into an administrative or instructional leadership role. We do have at our in our county something called inspiring instructional coaches, and we have it's like a 3 to 4 month program or a session where you come in, you get trained, and then that third session they start interviewing you and put you in a pool of prospective instructional coaches, and the principals can reach out to those pool of instructional coaches and reach out to see who's the best fit for their school culture. So we do have that. Um, Also, we aim to strengthen the communication between district officials and teachers regarding leadership pathways. So, want to make sure that all the teachers at not at our school, not just at our school, but in the district, are well aware of what's available to them as far as like leadership. So we have about 5 minutes left of this session. There are some extra questions I have here who would like to dive deep into that. So we have two of them. The first one says, how do you think your action plan will impact teachers and students at your school? And the last one says, what have you learned about the teacher empowerment throughout the AAPTEL process?
All right, so some of the action plan will be taken into consideration for the upcoming school year. The principal doesn't mind, but it's all about getting the other teachers and staff on board with the assistant principal to make the necessary changes. It's hard to move those seasoned and vet educators with the new changes. And teacher empowerment is linked to greater job satisfaction, and which can reduce turnover rates among educators and empower teachers are more likely to be initiative in their classroom. And when teachers feel empowered, they are more willing to collaborate with their colleagues and share best practices.
All right. And basically, what do I think? Okay, so the action plan is going to impact our student growth because we're like 1 point away from being a D school to a C school. So empowering these teachers and having them included in the process of making our school great is going to help our students at the school and it's going to help our teachers. And what have I learned about teacher empowerment through the APSEL process? Is it's not just the principals because they always think, oh, it's just on the principals. It's also on the teachers as well too. And in the research, it taught me that when teachers, students, and principals work together, you can affect a culture of student achievement because it's top down. So the principal, the teacher, and the teachers feeling empowered, that trickles down to the student because that energy is passed along. So that's pretty much what I've learned through the APTEL process. It's like an exchange of energy.
Um, So I think for ours, we're our action plan, we're really looking at kind of fixing that perception versus reality because there are so many leadership opportunities that teachers are taking on and so many different ways they're involved, but they aren't making that connection. So just being intentional about that. so that they understand how valued their opinion is. I think that that's something we just have to make sure teachers feel recognized, they feel seen, and they feel heard. And I think that can go a long ways in helping them feel empowered. So that's something we're going to kind of focus on. And then what I learned from the AAPTEL process, I put again there about we just have to be intentional about framing leadership opportunities for teachers because we don't want one of you made a great point. We don't want them to feel like they're being punished for being good at their job. We want them to view it as a leadership opportunity. I trust you so much. I'm empowering you and trusting you with this. I think it's a lot of it is about framing and how we approach it, so that it doesn't feel like extra work for no pay. It's a trust. I trust you, and I know you'll do a great job. So I think just being intentional about framing it properly can go a long way in helping staff feel valued.
All right,
Bernard?
awesome. So, how I think my action plan will impact students and teachers at my school, I really do think that they'll feel like they have a voice, especially through the hiring process, and I really want to make sure that happens. Um, Especially since we have a little bit of a high turnover rate. We want to make sure that the teachers at my school feel comfortable with the people that they're going to be working with, and they have a say so in that. Um, Also, I hope that we have a team of teachers that will be able to have an input on the budget this time around, this next year. So I really hope that happens. And also for what I learned about teacher empowerment, as you all said, just making sure that the principal can trust the teachers at their school to make sound decisions, leadership decisions, but also teachers take an opportunity to do that so that they can grow themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.